Hello, a very warm welcome to you. This is Frontline on NTA Benin. I am Ogochukwu Kapona, your regular host, and it's always a pleasure having you on the program. On this week's edition, we are going to be looking at Edo State, being famous for its brasswork, carvings, and wood works. And of course, it is also blessed with numerous monuments and sites. But stakeholders are worried that some of them are in a very sorry state. All right, on this program also today, we are also going to be looking at the return of the artifacts and of course efforts by all stakeholders, including the traditional institution, to see that it becomes fruitful at the end of the day. All right, in the studio, we have the curator, National Museum, Benin City, is Theophilus Umubai. So you're welcome to Frontline.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, let's begin from the very beginning. Can we have a brief history of how the struggle started, the stolen artifacts, and the clamor for their return?
Yeah. Like we all know, our history is replete with accounts of how the British came in 1897 with the sole purpose of bringing sorrow, tears, blood, and in the process they invaded the palace of the Oba of Benin. The Oba then was about Vorame. They burnt down the palace, not before, as only after they had arranged all the artifacts in the palace, numbering over 3,000 of them. Then they burnt the palace, burnt a lot of buildings in Benin, only after invading and taking these artifacts from shrines of chiefs and some other nobles in town. And they took these objects to Europe. From there, via the instrumentality of auction, they're selling them to places in Europe, museums in America, and so on and so forth. That was 1897. Over 100 years after, there has been this clamor for their return. Various fora, symposia, colloquia, people have been clamoring for their return. Every opportunity we have as a group, the National Commission for Museums and Monuments, we shared our thoughts for their return with these people who took them away. Recall also in 1977, still talking about clamor for their return. The first attack took place in Nigeria, and the Nigerian government determined that they wanted to use the ivory face mask, India ivory face mask, one of those objects taken in 1897, which was in the British and is still in the British Museum. The British government declined. The Nigerian government asked for it, the British government declined. So Obakenzo commissioned an artist to reproduce a replica which was used. And that replica is in the National Museum in Lagos. So it's been on like that. Clamor, no answer, strident calls for their return, no response until recently. As you must have heard, the German government they came up strongly on their own without any prompting.
Oh, there was no prompting at all.
No direct gem they bring.
Okay.
But what I mean by no prompting doesn't mean that there hasn't been this pressure. Talking about pressure, I recall vividly what the Benin Dialogue Group has been doing. The Benin Dialogue Group, of course, is a multinational collaborative working group that brings together curators from such European museums as British Museum, the one in Holland, in Germany, Switzerland, and the representatives of the National Commission for Museums and Monuments in Nigeria, representatives of the Oba of Benin, representatives of the Edo State government. The meetings have been held since 2010, periodically. We've held two now in Benin. And each time the curators will come together with these European curators, there has been this interest in these curators. You could see it, you could feel it, kind of palpable. that they are interested in the return of this object, one way or the other. But we have strong, all of us in that group, I'm strong by the fact that discussions about return of artifacts can only be held between governments. And that such discussions go above the purview of curators. So we now said, as curators, what could we do? So it got to a stage, this discussion I'm talking about the various meetings, where it was agreed that as curators we could take objects, even artifacts, abroad for exhibitions. Because even since that 1897, since the museum came into being, we'll be taking artifacts from Benin abroad to Europe and we bring them back.
And they were not stolen then?
No, because we go through the due process. Yes. We have what we call export clearance. The customs will always insist that they want to see that clearance for artifacts. So only the recognized body like National Museum can move such objects, and for that purpose. And once it's done, they return it. So it has been that movement, there have been that movement. So the Europeans now felt, why can't they, as European curators, equally bring objects to Benin for exhibition on rotational basis? This museum in Germany brings a number of objects, the one in UK brings a number of objects. Let's sit down together, write agreement on how they will come to Benin and come back. But that was what we could talk about. We didn't rule out the possibility of the ultimate permanent return, because we received a lot of flack for that. How can you go and sit down with the Europeans and discuss how the objects that belong to us, our Benitian would die, should now be negotiated as a loan,
like a plead?
Yes. So, but we didn't understand that that was how it would go. So, for the first time, the very first time that a highly placed government official, which was what we have been planning and praying for, that's the president of France, Macron. He went to Ouagadougou. And there he made that pronouncement that France planned to return objects. That was the very first official statement.
That was in which year?
And that was 20, I can't remember, I think it was 2017, 18. I can't really pinpoint which of them.
That is this,
recently.
First, yes.
Yes, recently. And we were all jubilant. I think it's 18. We were all happy about it, expecting things to happen. And nothing happened. All this while Germany was quiet. Then Germany came out now to say, you know what? We're not only saying that we want to return these objects, we are interested in what is happening with the Edo Museum of West African Arts. I think I must talk briefly about that because it's central to this issue of return. With a MOA.
A MOA by the state government?
Yes. We have a governor who is not just an art lover, who is not an art patron, but is someone who puts his money where his mouth is and where his interest is. He believes that through culture, through art tradition, the Edo name, Edo state, Benin, our name can, go up there and people will recognize us. So he physically attended the meeting that was held in Holland some 2 years ago. While he was there, because I was at that meeting, I was proud to see my governor, and there he said he would not only play host to that meeting 2 years ago, that he would build a museum. That was when he made that statement. And we're very happy and proud, of ourselves as Edo indigenous. He came back, he didn't just use words, he put all his plan into action. Because the Benin Dialogue Group took the Oba of Benin, Oba Ewai II, His Royal Majesty, had indicated interest to have a palace museum. So immediately he said that we at the Benin Dialogue Group held on to that. That was prior to when the governor came in strongly. So the governor came in knowing fully well that there was this idea of a palace museum and all that. But it just expanded its scope massively, which now dovetailed into this MOA. MOA has gone beyond our dream, even as Benin Dialogue Group participants. We didn't even envisage the type of magnitude of the project. During the last Alao Daro summit, that was when the architect, a renowned architect, Sir Ajay, well known, they had helped even Smithsonian, his company, as an architect, to design one of their museums. So the government went for the best.
Okay.
And that one came and gave us the sketch of a Moa.
Okay, so at what stage is Emoa now? Has work started?
And it's a project that you cannot just say, go and start digging and start putting block and brick together like you are doing a house. Because number one, the site for the museum, which is just opposite the Palace of the Oba of Benin, is an archaeological site. Anything that is related to Ring Road, that axis, because that's where the main Oba Palace was at the stage, including where the Oba Palace is now. If you are going there to do anything, you don't just bring bulldozers and start digging. You're going to destroy a lot of relics. You're going to destroy a lot of material culture that will normally tell us a lot about the history of not just of our people, but the history of our dynasty.
So it's going to take a long time.
So it was even announced during the summit that the next 2-3 years there will be archaeological excavation of that particular site. And the finds to be retrieved will form part of what we add to the ones we are expecting from abroad. So that can start any moment from now because the sketch, archaeological drawing for Emoa is out already. It's even in the public domain. And the idea of Emoa is just it goes beyond just an ordinary exhibit gallery to one that will include contemporary exhibition, that will include temporary exhibition, that will have space for the goon casters and other craftsmen to ply their trade, so that even visitors who come will see.
It should just be like a mini village.
A massive cultural hub. That's how the governor described it. The idea is to transform that entire stretch from that Oba Palace in front there, where we have the local government and all that, to see how there will be a pedestrian way. People can walk like it happens abroad, walk and enter the museum premises. So for that purpose, a pavilion is being planned to be built on the museum premises. That pavilion will house the finds from these archaeological digs. So that is the first stage.
Okay, and before then, the artifacts would have been returned.
Oh, we are hoping that but the Germans are very serious. They were in Abuja some time ago. So it's the first time we are seeing the European friends at the highest level of government coming out to say, you know what, let's do it. And we believe they will do it. And I'm sure once they fire that first salvo and bring the first batch, other European governments will follow suit. That's what we are hopeful for.
Yes, I'm a lover of culture, and I believe that's the expectation of every other indigene and, of course, citizen of Edo State. So, but hearing from you, how do you feel having these artifacts in Edo State? It's not what you're going to be viewing on the internet anymore. You can just walk to the museum and see it live and direct.
So I'm very elated, and also I know I speak the mind of my Director General, Professor Issa Tijani, Abaita Issa Tijani, when I say that we at the National Commission for Museums and Monuments, a major stakeholder in the MOA project, a major stakeholder in Benin Dialogue Group, we are happy, elated, to receive these objects when they come, and for them to form part of the display exhibition that will be at the mall. We are happy because the objects are of a great cultural significance. I must tell you that when in 1897 we can hardly see anyone who was born then. So you and I were definitely not born then. We came in much later. And the fact is that we've been reading about this, and all of a sudden we'll have them. I was privileged to be because of the Benin Dialogue Group, to be in England some years ago, 2017. And part of our itinerary was to visit the British Museum. So I got there and I saw our objects there on display. You could see that passion in me as an Edo man. I was born, bred, and buttered in Benin. All my schooling in Benin. So I'm talking as a Edo man.
There was this feeling of fulfillment.
There was feeling of fulfillment, but not full fulfillment. Because I was viewing these objects in showcases in another man's land. So I felt, why couldn't this thing be in Benin? why can't this dream turn to reality? That was then.
And so many people will have the opportunity to see them. Those who
To
cannot
view those
travel.
objects now, I can tell you, you have to have close to 1-2 million because you get tickets, you get your visa, your accommodation when you get there, and you're taking your money there to go and empower those people. But when the MOA comes on stream, what many people are not saying, there's this rippling effect on the economy. Up to the person selling pure water, up to the person, you get what I mean now. Because when the visitors come, the tourists start flooding here, they will empower the people. Then those of us who have been sitting and saying, when can I ever see this object? When can I see this game? With 50 naira inside 2K, you find yourself there. And you pay your fee and you go in and you go and view these objects. You don't have to travel abroad again. So with less than 500 naira, you are looking at the objects in Benin. That is a landmark achievement. And credit must go to the Benin Dialogue Group, especially Ebu Governor, Godwin Obaseki, and the Oba of Benin.
Okay, so can you give us a vivid example, like maybe how they look like, what are those things? What are the objects?
Good. I'll just quickly say, in these days of the world being a global village, trust me, just Google Benin objects and you see beautiful photographs of these objects that are taken away.
Like
they are just there.
Caverns.
You have the one that were done in the different media, done in ivory. I gave you an example earlier, the Quinidia mask. That one is the identity symbol of virtually most of the objects we have. You have so many bronzes, plaques, heads, totems, and so many of them, different forms. Our bronze casters of yore, they were chroniclers of the history of the people. They were not just there to make art for art's sake. They were telling the stories. And these are people who will sit down, observe the Oba in procession, for example, or during the Igwe, and try and memorize what they've seen, get back to their workshop the next day, and produce a plaque showing the Oba in procession with chiefs, with drummers, and all that. Freezing that activity on the particular bronze work. That takes intelligence. So when these objects got to Europe, I didn't even add that in 1897, it caused confusion over there. Here were people who saw or regarded and wrote about us as savages, we were brutish, we lacked culture, we were living on trees, and the objects came in and they were all astounded at the exquisite, beauty of these objects. To the extent they regarded them as the way they regarded Roman art. Hence the word classical came up. They said they believe classical objects. That adjective was tied to the Roman art. That would tell you the level. So in terms of conservation also, they were impressed that this object didn't arrive with patina all over bronze work, green things showing unkept. No, they were in very great beauty. So they were impressed, and all of a sudden, the objects, without anybody coming as an ambassador to go and say, Benin is this, the objects were already speaking that here we are from Benin, produced by the Benins. They couldn't have described such people who produce such wonderful works as illiterates.
Okay, so you mean they didn't sketch, like watching the Oba now, walking past, they will be sketching.
No, writing material was. I'm talking of. You know where this bronze.
That's a lot of intelligence.
That's what I'm telling you. People don't see the intrinsic value of these objects. Oba Ogboala in 1280 AD, 12. I'm talking of the 13th century. I think right now we are in 20 whatever century. Okay. I'm talking of 13th century. Was the one who issued the royal charter for the establishment of guilds. He felt that, the wood carvers are doing their own, the bronze carvers, no. Conform yourself into organized guilds, and there were over 50 of them. The one at Iguru is just one out of all of them. The rest might not have been as active as the Iguru, but the fact remains that we had an Oba who knew his audience as a leader and was able to organize these people into group. If he came in 12 AD to say that about Ogboala, then that tells you of the level of intelligence our Oba had at that time. And these people have been producing these works even since the time of the Ogiso. These objects have been there, these objects have been produced. So at that time, we didn't have the thought of the three arrows, writing, arithmetic, or whatever. We didn't have all those ones. A for apple, B for ball, E for Edo. We didn't have all those ones then. So we couldn't have been talking about any broadcaster sketching like a journalist like you are. So what they did was observe. And you're calling them illiterate? No, they are not illiterate. They were super intelligent. And they view a ceremony for 6 hours at the Oba Palace, drums are playing and they are watching, and they just go back to their distance and reproduce. These are the ones that they took away. Though there was life after 1897, because the same guilds continued production. So most of what we have in our museum today are the ones that came post 1897. So the arts never died. And it's only in Benin we have such continuity, because the knowledge is passed on from father to son. So they didn't have writing materials, but they were chroniclers of the history. They could tell the history. You pick up an object, you tell the story. We have a stool in our exhibit gallery in National Museum Benin. It's a telegraphic stool that Prince Agobasini, who became Oba Eweka II after Oba Oborame, commissioned these wood carvers to make, telling the story of what was happening in town, so that the Oba in Calabar could feel the pulse of the town. Only the Oba and those who made it knew what they were communicating to the Oba. But the Oyibo man who conveyed it to Calabar just saw it as, oh, beautiful, wonderful art piece. But behold, if you see that stool, a lot of things were happening. You could tell. The Oba understood what was going on in town, even though he was not in town. That is the beauty of our art. Not art for art's sake, but functional art, communicative art. That was why we say they are the historians. So nobody should underrate those people in the group. They are fantastic. Their great-grandfathers helped to capture the time perspective, freeze activities, frozen history, and today they are on their way back. And we are praying that we'll still be alive to witness the arrival of those objects.
Okay, so what is your last shot now to Edo citizens as they expect this great work of arts?
My last word will be, one, we should appreciate our art. People will look at the museum, for example, and call us Juju House. And some will say, we pour libation on the art we have there, and there should be no Christian working there, and this and that and that and that. A lot of things we hear about us, but it's not true. Every object embodies and conveys information. An artifact is an artwork that is backed by facts. The only difference is that it has facts. Otherwise, it's the same artwork. The same artwork, you can go to a go and say, you know what, do a plaque for me, do a head for me. I want to put on my table in my parlor. But once that object is used for a cultural activity, it becomes an artifact. It becomes an artifact. The first tag mask I told you about, it was used for first tag. It's not an artifact, it's been an artifact because it was used for a cultural activity. So people should visit the museum, for example, and see what we have on display. Then two, we should not narrate our culture. The Yoruba say, when an elder falls, he looks back. When the child falls, he looks forward. The elder looks back to go and see what was responsible for this fall. Why did I fall? For you to gain experience, you have to look back and find out why. You are moving along the line, you kick your leg against a stone. Next time, you want to be very more careful not to do that again. So experience is not what happens to you, it's what you do with the event that happened to you. So it doesn't repeat itself. We are repeating history today because we are not regarding history. So people should value our culture, value our tradition. That's why we, people like us, are happy that we have a thriving dynasty. In Benin. The Oba of Benin is the identity symbol, of the history and the art tradition of the Benin people. And we are proud of that tradition. And we want our people to be proud of their history so that things can be okay with us.
All right, thank you very much. Theophilus Obuba is the curator, National Museum, Benin, Edo State. We didn't touch on the modes and other sites, other monuments and sites. I think we're going to be revisiting that in our next edition. All right, we'll still have Mr. Theophilus Umubai in the studio next week for a continuation of this. But for now, thank you so much for watching and do stay safe.